Just because you think you fall in line today, and just because you agree with the regime today, the regime is going to change. It just always has, and it always will. And if you believe in a system where you believe in censoring the other side of the aisle, then you better watch out for when that side of the aisle gets in power. Because you better believe that once the precedent of censorship is set, it goes against you just as easy as it goes for you. And that's, again, why I love Bitcoiners, because we believe in rules without rulers. Because rulers are always going to be, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But if you've got rules, it's just like, here's the physics. Like, gravity is a rule that I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you're a right wing or a left wing or a libertarian or a communist or whatever, it's like you're just subject to gravity. Like, you just get 9.81 meters per second force towards the ground. That's it. I don't care who you are. Just get 9.81 meters a second. That's it. And no one has the power. No one has the ability to turn that off for you. We can't pick and choose people that get gravity and pick people that don't get gravity. Everyone just gets gravity. Everyone gets the protocol, and we all live within that. And that's a rule without rulers. And I think Bitcoin is like gravity, where it's just everyone gets free and open source money. Everyone gets programmable money, programmed and designed to maintain its purchasing power. And that's a rule. I don't care if you're left or if you're right or if you're up or if you're down or if you're a dog or if you're a human or whatever. It's just like, that's just what you get.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. The Bitcoin time chain is 863111, and the value of one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. Today's episode is Bitcoin Talk, where I talk with my guest about Bitcoin and whatever else comes up. Today, that guest is Adam O'Brien. Adam is the founder and CEO of Bitcoin Well. This conversation started out with a journey through Adam's own experience getting debanked by literally every bank in Canada while running a Bitcoin business back in 2013. And this led us into talking about the why of Bitcoin, making this episode perfect for someone who is just beginning to tiptoe around the edge of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But if you are already deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, fear not. I think you're going to love this episode too. Because Adam and I dig deep into why fiat absolutely sucks, short-term fiat versus long-term Bitcoin thinking, the political implications of separating money from state, the general Bitcoiner ethos, family, and a whole lot more. Before we dive in, do me a favor and subscribe to the Bitcoin Podcast wherever you are watching or listening, and give this show a boost on Fountain if you find it valuable. And if you're not on Fountain, please do check it out because it is awesome. Go to bitcoinpodcast.net for episodes and additional Bitcoin and Austrian economics resources. Grab discount links in the show notes for my kick-ass sponsor Bitbox and other partners. And send an email to hello@bitcoinpodcast.net if you have any feedback or if you're interested in sponsoring the Bitcoin Podcast. Without further ado, let's get into this Bitcoin talk with Adam O'Brien. Adam O'Brien, welcome back. It's just you this time now. I get some focused attention here. I love it.
That's it. We don't have Julian stealing the show here.
And I mean, he loves to hog the limelight. What can we say? I won't hold it against him though. It's we'll let it slide this time.
It's like I'm the exact same. I'm actually probably infinitely worse than he is. So definitely cannot hold anything against him. That's probably why him and I are such a good team.
Yeah, you guys have been crushing it on the content front. I mean, like that's nothing new. You have consistently crushed it since you guys have started working together, but I've just been loving it. Like really high signal, and again, it's like the stuff you put out. It's not leading with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's in the message there, but after you've already hooked them in with like what the fuck is going on with this world, which is I think like the proper approach. It's not so on the nose as like the Bitcoin Podcast, whoever would do something like that.
Hey man, you know what? We actually just couldn't do the Bitcoin Podcast because it was already taken. Like it was just there's already one, and so we're good there. But nah, man, like Julian and Issa are absolute tanks. It's amazing watching them in their craft, and I get to kind of just sit down and rant at a camera for a few minutes every day, and Julian finds something in there. But it's it's pretty sweet. It's pretty special when three people, you know, with values and mission aligned get together with a common goal. It's exciting.
It is just kind of wild. Like, you know, just speaking of like value and mission alignment, and this is going to sound cheesy, but what I genuinely love about Bitcoin and Bitcoiners is that there is genuine diversity amongst Bitcoiners, because Bitcoin doesn't care, right? Like, you go to a Bitcoin conference, and yes, there may be a higher ratio of dudes to ladies than at, you know, most places you go, but like that is going to even out more eventually. And it's like, but in terms of just the actual backgrounds of people, where they come from, who they are, it is genuinely just this beautiful smorgasbord. And yet everybody can get together under the same roof, coming from completely different places, and agree on fundamental things. And that agreement on fundamental things, that generalized ethos, while we may not agree on everything, which is also good, you need that debate within the community, but that fundamental ethos being there allows us to just, I think, create really strong bonds, like, quickly. That's another thing you notice. So you spend a little bit of time with Bitcoiners in person, you make new friends really quickly. Yeah. It helps that you may have known each other from X or from Nostr already, but it's like, it feels like you've known each other for years, and it's like you may have just met the other day, but you have that alignment, and that makes the friendship so much easier to start.
Yeah, man. I call it instamacy. It's like right away you've got this incredible connection. I think it actually stems from, because that doesn't exist at real estate conferences or at stockbroker conferences or like in legacy finance as a whole. It doesn't really, I don't think, exist in like, you know, media conferences. Like if you go to like, what's the South by Southwest, you know, big giant media conference, like I'm not sure that it exists there. And it's because Bitcoiners genuinely want to change the world. It's like we all are just absolutely crazy enough to think that we are in the driver's seat to take over the financial, you know, oligarchy, and we have the power to actually overhaul it. This is like, you know, MLK revolution on complete steroids, and it's powerful, man. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm so bullish on the future generation for that, because it probably, like, once you kind of take back the power of the money, you really take back the power of the people, which means the history books are going to actually properly reflect this event. I saw this amazing quote the other day that was like, you know, what are the chances, or it was like kind of being like a bit like sarcastic, and it was like, it's amazing that the good guy always wins throughout history. What are the chances?
Who'd have thunk? Like, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, wow.
The good guy always comes out on top.
Totally.
Well, you had in one of your recent videos, I'm forgetting, it might have been the one on Telegram. I want to get into a couple of them. It was either that one or maybe it was the corporatocracy one. You've had a bunch of bangers lately, but you were rattling off some Orwell quotes, and there's the one about it's like Orwell's dictum, right? He who controls, what is it? He who controls the past controls
the past.
There we go.
Controls the past, controls the future.
There, and there's Julian. The first time I heard that quote, besides like, I think I actually heard the quote from Julian Assange before I had read 1984. And it's just such a powerful one. And I remember at the time Assange was using it, this was like back in, I think, 2012, he was talking about it in relation to Bitcoin being, and the Bitcoin time chain being a protocol for basically censorship-resistant publication. He was looking at it from the journalistic point of view, obviously.
Like the free speech, like actual speech, and like what Nostr has kind of since maybe picked up and taken over.
Well, exactly. And I thought that was so powerful, because this idea, it's not that everything that is published is going to be true, but of course not. All right. You know, but you do have proof of publication at a certain time. And that in and of itself is really powerful. And did you get a chance to, just speaking of free speech, you get a chance to read Ross Stevens' paper that he did for NIDIG yet?
No.
It's awesome. I as soon as it came out, I was like, I gotta read this out loud. So I recorded it like yesterday. I was editing it until like 1 a.m. and
wow,
got some bags, you know, today from that, but well worth it. But really incredible piece, heavily influenced by Gigi's inalienable property rights that he did. This basically the Bitcoin is speech thesis he published that years ago. But but it's fantastic. And he walks through, Ross does a great job. It's like, it is heavily cited. Like there is so many different citations and footnotes and all this legal precedent that goes into it, which is really fascinating because he's making the case that Bitcoin is not just free speech in this kind of amorphous or like feel good, way. Like this is actually the legal constitutional law case for why Bitcoin is free speech.
Totally.
And I think that is so powerful to be able to make that argument and say, yeah, it's not just that you're, publishing transactions. It's that you can also, whatever you think of ordinals and inscriptions, that really lends a lot of credence to a free speech argument as a publishing medium. And then as, expressive content is protected under the First Amendment, and then expressive association as well, which is like minors and all of us Bitcoiners and psychopaths getting together at conferences. That's expressive association. But yeah, if you don't feel like reading it, luckily you can listen to it in my buttery smooth voice. So I got you covered,
I was just going to say, like, come on. I'm going to put that on before bed, nice little walker in the ears, putting me to sleep. Maybe I'll have some dreams about you that night. That sounds like a win-win.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Man, but no, I mean, no, go ahead.
It's like, it's shocking how far away our money has gotten from, the root of it, which is just simply to be a representation of our value, of the efforts that we put in on a daily basis. I heard Jack Mahler's, actually, he was in Nashville. He was talking about this, and he was saying how, the profit or excess that you as an individual have at the end of a month is a demonstration of your contribution to the world. It's a tell that you produce, you give to the world more than you consume from the world. And that's such a beautiful picture. People have like psyopted and demonized, profit, and it's like, no, like the fact that I can give so much value that people are willing to pay for it, and that I can consume less than that is a heroic. Like you have that apart from animals. You have that apart from every other species on this planet. That's what makes a human being unique. And of course, when you start to dig in or like kind of introduce these foreign third-party objects such as government and regulations, then that ecosystem gets all messed up, as all natural ecosystems do. But it is such a beautiful, pure mindset around like, hey, I give to the world more than I take from the world, and here's my proof. And it's just like, oh, that's so nice.
It is, and it's, you obviously need a measuring stick to actually value that, right? Because there are, in this broken ass fiat system, there are so many people that that are actually extractors, right? That are probably net consumers, but because of the brokenness of the system, there are games that can be played that allow you to make it seem as though you are a net producer when you are in fact not. You are,
this is like the corporatocracy versus communism kind of video that you were just referencing. It's like, when your marketing team turns into a lobbyist group, you've lost. Or at least that's like the indication that you're in a system that's lost. Tobacco industry would not have survived without the ability to lobby. And, even like Big Sugar, like there's documented, RFK does a great job explaining how like the documentation of Big Sugar fully just paying their way into regulation. And it's like, what? How is this an indication of capitalism? How can you even call this? How can you even look at this through the same lens as a free market? And you can't. I mean, even to the likes of, like Elon and Tesla and all the subsidies and government, handouts that they get, it's shocking and mind blowing. And what it does is it brings society further and further away from a society that's going to thrive and survive for many generations. And we like artificially inflate today at the massive detriment of tomorrow. And it just shows how little we care about our little grandbabies and like our little, I work hard today and be, like being in Bitcoin a long time, like it's we're super fortunate, it's all that stuff. And people are like, how do you find the energy, the passion? Like, I've got some buddies in fiat land that are, working their cushy jobs, making their $500,000 salary, like all good, 30 hours a week kind of thing, like all Fridays off, whatever. He's like, what are you doing? Like, how are you? And I'm like, dude, I'm working for my great-great-granddaughter. Like, I'm creating actual generational wealth here. I'm not looking to just coast. Like what? God gave me 100 years here and I'm going to coast for 70 of them? Like, I don't think so. I'm here to make a difference. And I think that Bitcoin is that measuring stick that you indicated. It's that system that so closely relates to the human being's efforts. And it's like the perfect form of money. It's the perfect measuring stick. It's the perfect way to showcase to your future generations, I worked hard, I sacrificed, and now it's your turn.
Yeah. No, I think I just kind of figured out a thread that I want to weave for today's discussion, if you're game for it. Kind of a little bit of the why Bitcoin matters.
Nice.
Because, and I think we naturally need to start out a little bit with the problem statement of fiat. Because you're right, I've got a similar situation where I've got a lot of buddies from college, awesome dudes, love these guys. They all do very, very well for themselves. They work for big banks and investment firms, or they're corporate lawyers, make a lot of money, and they're happy with where they're at right now, and that's fine. Like, again, I think everybody should do whatever the heck they want with their own life. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. Some of them have started coming around to saving in Bitcoin a little, which I think is great, but they still look at it as like, that's like that thing that Walker and Carla are kind of into a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it's
an investment, part of our portfolio.
Right. Yeah. Just, take a couple bucks, throw it in there and see what happens. And then, sell it in a year or two when it goes up.
Right.
But it's that mentality shift. And I think maybe a good place to start, we're at this strange place in the world right now. We have so much access to so much information. Whether that be information about Bitcoin, whether that be information about your health, you actually have the ability to do your own research without needing to go to your local library and order a copy of some outdated, manuscript that's maybe going to give you some insight. It's like, no, you can just use this thing, this supercomputer in your pocket that we call a phone, which is like the least exciting thing it does, and you can go find out anything you want. This is amazing. And yet so many people choose not to. And I think that there's perhaps something that the fiat system has forced people to do is, I think it has taken away a lot of the attention span that people have. It's that high time preference mentality of, I don't have time to go deep down that rabbit hole because I don't have time for anything. Like, bust my ass at work, get home. If you got a family, try to spend time with your wife and kids. Try to, do something fun on a weekend or two if you can manage it. Try to be a decent human being. But there's not a lot of time for a lot else, or so it seems. And perhaps you're also just, spending 3 hours a night watching sports as well, or something. Nothing against sports, but again, do whatever the fuck you want. But I think that people lack the attention span sometimes to get deep into things. And part of the reason, I think, is because they're so used to needing to constantly try to stay one step ahead, to run on that hamster wheel faster and faster and faster so that they don't fall off and they can keep the lights on and they can keep their family together and happy. And because, the people that are able to do very well and have that extra time, it's because they really understand how this fiat system works. They understand how to play this system. And that's great for them. But the majority of people don't. And I think that's because it's a system that is designed, whether purposefully or otherwise, to be really difficult to navigate. Yeah, there's lots of loopholes you can find if you know where to look and you've got good lawyers and that kind of thing. But for the average person, that stuff is not even close to on their radar. And so maybe, I would love, you mentioned this a little bit when we had the discussion with the whole Git-based crew, but your story of coming into Bitcoin, I think, very well illustrates some of the problems with the fiat system. Can you talk about that a little bit and just your experience that kind of radicalized you fairly quickly, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, no, it's it is interesting. And when you're going through kind of like, I've been in Bitcoin now for a decade, and when you're going through the journey, so to speak, it doesn't feel like a big deal. But then when you look back on it and you realize kind of like, it's a little bit like battered wife syndrome. It's like, oh no, that was fine. No, this is okay. This is normal. It's like, whoa, actually, yeah, there's a little bit of bad things here. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that, like, to your point on the system, whether it's intended or not, it basically comes down to how we teach our children, and we've transitioned from teaching them how to think and how to learn into what to think and what to learn. And lucky for me, like, that just never jived with me. I was always like, much to my parents' and teachers' dismay, I was like constantly challenging and asking why, and just like naturally inquisitive. And you see that, the people that change the world are the ones that question, are the ones that ask, why is it like this? Are the ones that have the attention span, or more so the drive, I think. Because my attention span is completely shot. I got like zero attention span. But I just have probably like the drive and the desire and the stubbornness to ask why, and then find the answer. And it's that's what's kind of driven me, from finding Bitcoin in 2013, and then just kind of keep on driving down this road of the Bitcoin journey. You find Bitcoin, you think it's a joke, you think it's a scam, you think it's fake, you think you're late, and then you try to disprove it, like every hero, right? I'm going to be the hero on Reddit, or at that time was the IRC chats, and like tell all these idiots what's real. And then it's like, well, actually, the decentralization, the first basic principles, like that kind of makes a bit of sense. And well, I suppose proof of work, like you actually do want some actual value being tied to your digital token. So, okay, that's good. Yeah, the decentralized, like the blockchain distribution system in nodes, that checks out. That's pretty good. But what about real money? What about, it's got to have some government backing. Oh, well, historically, actually, government backing never really worked, and here's why. And oh, there's a lie about inflation, that it actually kickstarts economies, and here's some, historical. It's like, oh, wow, everything I just like learned for the last 12 years is just like unraveling every day. Every article I read about Bitcoin unravels a new history lesson, unravels a math lesson, unravels the thread of the world. And then again, lucky me, I'm just like all in. Let's go, 110%. I am the Bitcoin guy. And as it turns out, our monopolistic Canadian banking system just doesn't like that too much. And so, from the span of 2015 to 2017, 18, every single bank in Canada proceeded to debank me. And to the point, actually, where it's not just me anymore. My wife, who stays at home with our 4 children, and the Scotiabank, just like, which is like one of the large banks in Canada, just debanked. Sent her a letter. I posted on Twitter, I think it was in May or so. They were just like, outside of our risk guidelines, like, off you go. It's like, what? What are the risk guidelines? What could this possibly be? And it kind of showcased to me how little, and I'm obviously happy to go into as much or little detail as you want, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's like big bank doesn't like Adam. Big bank gets rid of Adam and his family. And there's some funny things in there, because you can't buy a house with cash. You can't pay your taxes in cash. I went to go buy my wife a car, negotiated the price, all good, here we go to the dealership with like my suitcase of money, which they told me I could use. They were like, whoa, you didn't tell me you were paying in cash. I was like, well, I said cash. And they were like, well, we thought you meant check. And I was like, well, no, I said cash, and I meant cash. And they're like, well, we got to give that money to the police. The police got to keep it for 10 days, blah, blah, blah. I was like, whoa. Like, you're not going to give this money to the police? Like, on what grounds is this a problem? Like, here's money. You can, like, Google me. You can see I'm, like, pretty, like, I'm not some drug lord. Like, here we are. And just the more and more you unravel, the more and more you realize that we're living in a system that's not designed for individuals. And I think that was what, like, that flipped the switch, an irreversible switch. It's like, it's on, there's duct tape over top, do not remove, like, always on switch. And as a result, I'm just some, like, insane psychopath that is dedicated to enabling independence for as many people on planet Earth as humanly possible. And I think that's a net positive. I'm very thankful that I have the like curiosity and things that have driven me to here. But it is definitely, like, it's not without its problems, I suppose. And if you want to change the world, I suppose you need to be comfortable in the uncomfortable chairs, which is something that I'm lucky and thankful I am.
The great thing about Bitcoin is no one can debank you because you are your own bank, as long as you have custody of your private keys. But you need to keep those keys safe, and the best way to do that is to go to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use the promo code Walker for 5% off the fully open source, Bitcoin-only BitBox02 hardware wallet or anything else in their store. Then get your Bitcoin off the exchange and into your own self-custody so you actually can be your own bank. Not only is the Bitcoin in your Bitbox safe from government confiscation and, of course, fiat debasement, but Bitbox is one of the only 2 wallets to actually address the dark Skippy vulnerability. So if you have a Bitbox, you are in luck. Plus, and I cannot emphasize this part enough, but the BitBox02 is truly easy as hell to use. Whether you are brand new to Bitcoin and it's your first time setting up a hardware wallet, so you're a little bit nervous, or you are a well-seasoned psychopath and you know this setup like the back of your hand. Again, it is Bitcoin only and it is fully open source. You can head to their GitHub and verify that for yourself. There is no need to trust me or trust Bitbox. When you go to bitbox.swiss/Walker and use the promo code Walker, not only do you get 5% off, but you also help support this fucking podcast. So thank you. Amen to that. I would love to know a little bit more, and just for folks listening, can you explain what was the business that you were running and are running that got the banks so fired up about your risk profile and how dangerous it was that they possibly banked you?
Yeah, man. So started in 2013. I was just basically the guy in Edmonton, which is my local town, selling Bitcoin. And then we bought some Bitcoin ATMs and had Bitcoin ATMs in Alberta and Saskatchewan, the neighboring province, and BC, the other side province, and kind of built up this network of Bitcoin ATMs. From there, we moved into Interac e-Transfer, which was like our local kind of like Venmo equivalent, and we accepted Interac e-Transfer for Bitcoin, and we had some other like you could pay your bills in Bitcoin and all this other stuff, and with that, unfortunately, there's lots of cash in that in that ATM industry, and the banks deemed the cash to be bad. And in all fairness, like fair enough, you can deem cash to be bad if you want to as a bank. But what I pushed on was show me why, and this is where things got really crazy. Was the man in the front in the suit was saying, like, no cash. And I'm saying, fine, how come? And he's saying, oh, because of compliance. And again, fair enough. Show me which compliance. Because, like, here I am. I got FinTrack, which is our, like, FinCEN equivalent. Like, I'm buttoned up. I've got my jurisdictions. Here's my compliance manual. Here's our practices and policies. All written by some fancy person in Toronto, and they got all the qualifications, and I got all the qualifications, and I wrote the tests, and we got the certificates, and we've got the lawyers, and here's my compliance that tells me I'm on side with the law. What am I missing? Because I don't want to go to jail. Please help me, good sir. You're protecting me, obviously, right? You're in the chair of protection. Please, can you showcase to me where I'm offside? Oh no, we won't do that. It's like, well, you told me I'm wrong. I'm telling you I'm right. Will you at least take my manual to those people in the back room, the black box, and show them? Oh, no, we don't have to see your compliance policy. It's like, well, I'm offside because of compliance, but yet you don't want to see my compliance documents? Like, how does this work? It's kind of like me accusing you of doing something and you saying, no, here's evidence that I didn't do that, and you being like, no, I don't want to see the evidence. Like, okay. And this happened over and over and over and over again. And this is when, that was actually like the tipping point for me to realize, like, Bitcoin is for freedom. Bitcoin is not for some number go up investment. It is for freedom. And then, this is now almost 10 years ago. This is 8-9 years ago. This is happening to me and my family throughout like all the banks in Canada. It's not just a one-off. It's literally every single one in Canada. And so, I'm talking to my friends, and I'm talking to my parents and my parents' friends, and everyone's just like, Adam's nuts. Like, lost it. This kid is insane. He's crazy. Banks don't steal money. Banks always want to have the money. Adam's wrong. And then in 2022, we had our big trucker protest here in Canada, and like everyone flipped. Everyone said, wow, Adam was right. Like, the banks are going to shut people down who they don't align with, or the government, or like whoever the powers that be are. It's kind of the same. In Canada, the banks and the government are all the same arm. And it became very, very apparent that the only funds available throughout that trucker protest, and also in my life, has been Bitcoin and self-custody. And you realize this is, a big part of my of like when I speak, I give a presentation called Self-Custody or Bust, and this is a big piece of it. Is like, Bitcoin price is one of 5 properties of Bitcoin. The other 4 are for freedom, and we ignore the other 4 so frequently because we're so, as you said earlier, fixated on price, fixated on the system, fixated on attention span that can't really expand. We don't fully understand the money system here in Canada or in the world, and as a result, we don't have the ability to zoom out and see what the fix would be to a system that we don't really even think is broken. And so I kind of just made it my mission to, Bitcoin Well exists to enable independence, and this was a big piece of, even down to the name. We used to be called Bitcoin Solutions. I wanted to make Bitcoin accessible and understood. That was the initial tagline that I came up with. Unfortunately, it was the max creativity that I had at the time was Bitcoin Solutions. So that was it. We were capped. And then in 2020, we changed our name to the Bitcoin Well. And where the word Bitcoin Well came from was thinking about this mission of independence and freedom. I thought back to early settlers, and when you were finding a new area, the first thing you had to do was dig your well. And the first thing you needed was a source of water coming into your community, and into, otherwise life's dead. You don't get to live. And Bitcoin is the financial water for all of us settlers that are kind of coming out of the old system, coming out of old Britain, coming out of old Europe, and traveling across this sketchy ocean towards the promised land of a Bitcoin circular economy. And we're all digging wells, and I wanted Bitcoin Well to be the well that people came to, that learned about first principles self-custody, that learned about Bitcoin only, and why only buying Bitcoin versus crypto is important. I wanted them to learn about key management and ultimately sovereignty principles that have shaped my life and shaped my personality. And then of course the double entendre of Bitcoin good was just I'm still a little kid at heart, and so that was just too good to pass up. So we've been the Bitcoin Well now for 3 years. Not really the Bitcoin Well, just Bitcoin Well, and and that's us. And I'm super proud of what we've got today. You can buy Bitcoin online, you can sell Bitcoin online, you can pay your bills. We'll be launching gift cards here right away, so be able to buy gift cards with Bitcoin. We've got swaps from Lightning to Bitcoin. We're really trying to backing up a little bit. Overarchingly, we kind of ask ourselves, how do you use money? And there's many different ways to use money. And then we just kind of go down the list and say, how do you apply Bitcoin to this? And then build it, launch it, next. Truly looking to create, I have no interest in competing with Coinbase or other, crypto casinos. I want to compete with Bank of America, and I want to compete with the big banks in Canada. And that's what we're about. We want to enable independence.
I love it, man. I'm curious on the banks themselves. Did they all give you some version of the same line?
Oh yeah.
Or was there? So it was that must have been kind of eerie. So you're going from bank to bank. You're maybe this is a one-off. Maybe this is a fluke. These guys just have some sort of really strict compliance. But then as you're telling me that, I'm just wondering. Okay, so there are no ATM companies, just fiat ATM companies in Canada. That doesn't exist. They're debanked. So did you ever find out? Did any of them ever mention the fact that it was? I presume because you were a Bitcoin associated business, it couldn't have just been the cash, right? That's otherwise, again, how does any ATM company get banked?
So not directly, but yes, that ultimately did come out there, and it didn't come out in direct question and answer. How the bans worked in Canada for me was at certain banks, I'd get a timeline ban. Some banks just outright banned me forever, and some gave me, it felt like a cooling off period, I guess. And so after the few years were up, I'd go back and they'd go through and they'd say, are you still in the Bitcoin industry? Or are you still in the crypto industry? And that was kind of oh, interesting. They're catching on to this. The hilarious, I think where where the hilarity kind of started for me, and maybe I just got so disenfranchised with having a bank that it just became funny. But I was at one of the banks after my 7-year ban was up. They decided arbitrarily to give me 7 years. So my 7-year ban is up. 7-year ban. You can't have an account for 7 years. And so 7 years goes by. I walk into the bank. I've got my passport and all my documents, and I'm ready to get a bank account. Like, look at me. I'm going to get a checking account. Like, maybe I get a line of credit. You know, do I get to ape into Bitcoin on someone else's cash? Like, here we go. You know, I'm just excited to be able to pay my power bill out of a bank account in my name. And so I walk in, and we go to the back room, and we're getting all the docs set up. And she's like, oh, well, that's weird. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, oh, well, you're blacklisted. I was like, no. That was a 7-year blacklist. It's almost 8 years now. Like, I'm good. She's like, okay, well, let me go see. So she goes to the back room, talks to the black box people, and then she comes back and she goes, no, we upgraded your 7-year ban to a lifetime ban. And I was like, oh, how come? And they're like, well, we weren't happy with your banking practices. And I was like, but I was banned. Like, how could you be unhappy with practices that weren't happening because I was not banking here? Like, it's just a hilarious. And of course, you know, like, the girl at the teller making $22 an hour doesn't know. She just sees do not open, you know, talk to the manager who says do not open, and then that's it. Like, she doesn't care. She's like, it's my smoke break soon, let me go. So it is what it is. But I've got a pile of letters, and I've recorded most conversations in the bank. You know, at the end of the day, none of that really matters because I don't have my resources are not well spent suing the bank. You know, it's probably in their terms of service that they can just do whatever the hell they want at any time with your money, so it doesn't really make a legal difference. And at the same time, you know, I decided to focus my efforts on building what we're building at Bitcoin Well. And I think that's a net benefit for humanity. And that's, I think, the difference overarchingly in a Bitcoiner and someone in the fiat system is the fiat system tends to breed people that want to get even. They tend to breed people that want to just, like, you know, get some level of like retribution and like eye for an eye type of mentality. But like, the world becomes a better place when we zoom out and focus the efforts on fixing the problem that's caused us pain, not hitting the person that's caused us pain. And I'm a big believer in that. That's like, you know, that's an age-old teaching. Like, biblically, that's like a teaching that's probably just a sound form of thought and taught. And I think that rings true in most Bitcoiners that I know, the good ones anyways. They're not really of the, like, we need to ruin someone else's life. They're definitely closer to, I want to fix the lives of the future. And that's amazing, and that's healthy, and that feels really good.
It does. And, you know, as you were telling this story, it made me think of this Chinese proverb that I heard Alan Watts recite once, which is, it's a very short one. I'll rattle it off here, but it's this farmer, and one day the farmer's horse, his only horse, runs off, and the villagers come by. They say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, your horse is gone. What a shame." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then the next day, his horse comes running back, and it's brought with it 5 wild horses that were following it. And he's got 6 horses now. The villagers come by. "Oh my gosh, you are so lucky. Well, you must feel great. How fortunate you are." And he said, "Maybe." And then the next day, his son is trying to break one of the wild horses, and his son is thrown off, shatters his leg, can't walk, laid up in bed. The villagers, concerned as always, come by again and say, "Oh, that's so terrible. We're so sorry. You must feel just awful at your bad fortune." He says, "Maybe." And then the next day, the army comes by, conscripting able-bodied young men, and his son is not conscripted. And the villagers come by and say, "Wow, you really are so fortunate." And he says, "Maybe." And that's, your story made me think of that, because at the end of the day, if you wouldn't have had such that's one of the, like, worst debanking and unable to ever get banking stories you can possibly imagine. Just time after time, shut down, trying to run a business, can't do it, literally cannot get access to these banking rails that most people would assume if you don't have that, how do you even have a business today? How do you even manage?
Totally.
But you've managed, and probably because that kind of radicalized you so much, all these steps brought you here to where you are today. And without those misfortunes at the time, I'm just imagining you sitting there and people are like, wow, that sucks, man. You keep getting debanked. And it's just like, maybe, maybe, but look where you are today. And so in a way, we have the shitty fiat banking system to thank for radicalizing you to a point where you've now made this your life's work.
Yeah.
But
well, and
it's wild.
That's kind of the law of first principles too, right? Is you can try to manipulate a natural system as much as you want, but eventually you get to a point, or the system gets to a point, where you cannot manipulate any longer. And you are always going to succumb. You can never prevent a natural system from doing its thing. You can just delay or accelerate what would have already happened. And Bitcoin has and is the inevitable way to store the value that you create with your time. Bitcoin is the most natural form of money this world has ever seen. And it's going to come. Like, the banks can try to stop it, and Kamala Harris can try to stop it, and PPC can try to stop it. It doesn't matter. It's going to be here. And you might get lucky and delay it a year. You might preserve your political riches for another year or two, or maybe a decade. But when you zoom out, it is completely meaningless to try to intervene with this natural system. And I think that you're just on the wrong side of history if you're fighting against Bitcoin right now.
I would concur with that wholheartedly.
I assume you would, running the Bitcoin podcast.
One thing I want to dig into with you a little bit is, because, okay, perhaps if somebody's listening to this, and I try to gear this show towards both well-seasoned psychopaths, but also newcomers who may somehow stumble across it, like I did with What Bitcoin Did back in the day, and then Guy Swan's Bitcoin Audible. Like, those were the number 1 and number 2 podcasts that I started listening to. And one thing that I think is really important is the actual problem statement of fiat. Because somebody may be listening and they hear that, all of these debanking stories and thinking, oh my gosh, well, I mean, that's horrible, but that's not going to happen to me. I don't run a Bitcoin business. I don't step out of line. I'm not a Canadian trucker protesting, overreaching government mandates. So maybe that's a nice story, but that only happens to a few people. And while that actually may be true, I think that there is this other side of the why fiat sucks argument, which is you are literally having your life's work, the fruits of your labor, your time and energy stolen from you by currency debasement.
Yes.
And I kind of want to riff on that a little bit, because I think that's something that people, even when the way that the media and politicians talk about inflation, they're never actually talking about inflation. They're talking about prices rising. They're talking about the downstream result of monetary debasement. But we just colloquially refer to it as inflation. But it's price inflation, which happens with a lag after monetary inflation. Even the way economists and the folks at the Federal Reserve and Bank of Canada will talk about inflation is going down. Look at inflation's the lowest it's been since whatever year, and they pat themselves in the back, and the politicians get their sound bites, and aren't we wonderful? And everyone's happy. But if you zoom out, instead of just going year over year, and you look at the fact that inflation is cumulative, they're looking at year over year metrics, but just because inflation went down 1% from 3% to 2% inflation, let's say, inflation decreased, but no, it didn't. That's just
going up less fast.
Yeah, it's just robbing you slightly more slowly.
I heard a great analogy for this was someone tweeted and they were like, well, I was 250 pounds and then I gained 10 pounds and then I gained 12 pounds and then I gained 6 pounds and then I gained 2 pounds. My weight gain went down. And it's like, but I'm still 280 pounds.
That is a great analogy.
It was so good. It hit the nail on the head so well. It's like, good for you. You're gaining less weight, But actually, the goal is not to be gaining weight. It's to be losing weight. And our monetary debasement, to your point, is in this state where it is programmed to just debase and get less valuable. Because prices, I mean, you and I know this, prices don't rise. The money we use to buy the things just get less valuable. It's like, things aren't more expensive in Mexico. It's just the money, like, a car is 700,000 pesos. It's like, wow, cars are so expensive in Mexico. Like, no, just the money you use to measure the car is less valuable than what we use here. And it's such a mind bender to get your head around. It's insane. And I mean, yeah, we can. I think though, before we dive into like the theft, because I'm a big believer in that theory, and I actually think I've got some like reasonable logic to get us there. But just speaking to the person that thinks that'll never happen to me, I'm not an extremist. I'm not some hardcore anti-vaxxer like the criminal financial terrorist that is Adam. One day you will be. And what I mean by that is government control doesn't just occur to one side of the aisle. It occurs to both sides of the aisle. And our political system is designed such that the pendulum swings from left to right. It doesn't ever stay, in the center where everybody's happy. And I think the best way to articulate this is actually with the abortion argument. Because politicians fall on it's very split, two very clear lines on the end of that. One side is pro-life, one side is pro-choice. It would be very reasonable. I think both of this is unreasonable, but you can follow my thought logic here. It would be very reasonable for a pro-choice politician to debank and ban the pro-life proponents. And likewise, it would be very reasonable and expected for a pro-life politician to debank and punish the pro-choice people. And that, in my mind, as much of a shocking, there's some clickbait for you, Walker. You can talk about abortion and get some clicks. Although that's probably getting you demonetized now. I'm not sure where the rules are, but I think that's a good indication that just because you think you fall in line today, and just because you agree with the regime today, the regime is going to change. It just always has, and it always will. And if you believe in a system where you believe in censoring the other side of the aisle, then you better watch out for when that side of the aisle gets in power. Because you better believe that once the precedent of censorship is set, it goes against you just as easy as it goes for you. And that's, again, why I love Bitcoiners, because we believe in rules without rulers. Because rulers are always going to be, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But if you've got rules, it's just like, here's the physics. Like gravity is a rule that I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you're a right wing or a left wing or a libertarian or a communist or whatever, it's like you're just subject to gravity. Like you just get 9.81 meters per second force towards the ground. That's it. I don't care who you are. You can like go in a plane for a little bit and spend some energy and get up. You can like crouch down and dig a hole and spend some energy and go down. But you just get 9.81 meters a second. That's it. And no one has the power. No one has the ability to turn that off for you. We can't pick and choose people that get gravity and pick up people that don't get gravity. Everyone just gets gravity. Everyone gets the protocol, and we all live within that. And that's a rule without rulers. And I think Bitcoin is like gravity, where it's just everyone gets free and open source money. Everyone gets programmable money, programmed and designed to maintain its purchasing power. And that's a rule. I don't care if you're left or if you're right or if you're up or if you're down or if you're a dog or if you're a human or whatever. It's just like, that's just what you get. And no one can change that for you. And that's, pure Bitcoin, obviously, raw Bitcoin, real Bitcoin on the blockchain. And that's why I love Bitcoin. Do you get that? So just before we riff on, how inflation creates slavery and why I've even gone as far as to say, like, a world without Bitcoin is more war-torn. And I believe that to be true. But before we get there, it's just very important to note that if you are someone listening right now who's on the side of the regime, and good for you, I'm not going to sit here and criticize your beliefs. You will be subject to authoritarianism one day, either you or your grandkids. And I think it's important to advocate for free and open source, programmable rules, but not rulers.
I think thank you for clarifying that, because it is a really important thing for people to realize. everybody thinks when their colored team is in power,
right?
Yeah, and there's also this, I think, some of this tendency to think, well, if we don't do it to them, they're going to do it to us, whatever it might be in this context. It's almost this proactive approach to like, well, we've got to be the ones who are in charge of the censorship because we can't
let's shoot before they shoot us, right?
right, yeah, shoot first, ask questions later, and just make sure not too many of our people get caught with friendly fire. But that's the thing. At a certain point, you are going to be on the wrong side of a regime because that pendulum does swing back and forth. And that's why I think we've lost so much, we as a collective, not we as individuals, but we as a collective seem to have lost so much of a principles-based approach to how things are done. Like that was the whole point of in the United States, the Constitution, right? And all the amendments that we put together was to have founding documents that allowed us to operate as a constitutional republic and have checks on stupid ideas that would come down the pipe later because we could refer back and say, no, that's not what we're about, actually.
It's like core values, setting a core value, setting a filter to govern your decisions, rules, right? We need this ability to have filters for decisions because, any smart person can probably justify any argument, but you have to have a set of core rules and as a filter to that. We use that in our organization all the time. And the one that I struggle with the most, we have excellence as a core value. And you think like, well, obviously, what a lame core value. What do you want, excellent things or non-excellent things? But the opposite of excellence is not excellence, it's perfection. And the key indicator there is the pace at which you deliver. Because if you maintain a platform of perfection, you're going to be slow. You don't get to make perfect things fast, and no one does, because perfection requires this insane, meticulous review process versus a platform of excellence where we kind of move fast, and we've got this first principles approach of make the right decision the first time and then trust it. And we obviously make wrong decisions. We come back and we fix it, but it's a net faster movement. We get to build more things faster as a result. And I think that having that filter, even for me, because man, I'll spend hours looking at a newsletter, and it's like, or looking at like, the copy and the receipts, and it's like, and I drive myself crazy, and I'm up at night and I'm like, oh, what do we need? What's the word here? And then I just think to myself like, good grief, ship it and move on. Like, let's just get it out here. And having that filter, which is, again, what the Constitution should be, what the amendments should be, having that filter is so important. We actually just launched one of those filters in Alberta. Our premier yesterday or 2 days ago, she made 3 amendments to the Alberta, the equivalent of the Constitution. Bodily autonomy. There's not going to ever be any vaccine mandates in Alberta ever again. She's given right to medical bodily autonomy, I suppose. Firearms, she's given amendment in there, guaranteed rights to bear arms. And there was one more which seemed less important than the other two, so I just must have forgotten it. But it's interesting. Now, that said, so my mind goes, oh, bravo. Like, she's a Bitcoiner. I've gotten to meet with her. She's wow. Great. And that's all good. But it's like, hey, wait a second. Someone in charge just changed the rules. So it's like, well, is it all just a shell game? Does it even matter at this point if the next person that comes in charge can just Control-Z that and sign a new piece of paper and rechange the rules back? Like, what does it matter? It's just all virtue signaling at that point, because it's not protocol driven. It's just still trust and centralization at work.
I think that for so many people, it's really difficult to wrap their minds around the fact that the people in power are in fact just people. Like, totally. They are not endowed with some incredible mental acuity or this fortitude to be this amazing leader. They're just people. They are fallible. They make mistakes all the time. They may, the line between good and evil cuts through the heart of all of us, right? It's, some people are, that line goes way more to the evil side. Like, you might be a murdering psychopath and like, okay, that's a different story. But for most people, they're treading that line, and they do some good things. They do some shitty things. You try to be more on the side of good, right? But they're ultimately just people. And when you have an incentive system that is so warped that, because that's what this all comes down to, right? And we're talking about, kind of the Bitcoin versus fiat mentality. And for me, so much of it comes down to that incentive system. What is the system itself, or the protocol itself? What is it incentivizing people to do? Are the incentives to be, to create value, to try and be a good steward of what you have, and to grow your lot in this life and build something of lasting significance for yourself and for your family, for your grandchildren's grandchildren, as you were talking about earlier? Or is the incentive to consume as much as you can, as fast as you can, as long as it's given to you, because you've just got to eat as much of that pie as you can possibly get, and there are winners and losers, and you know what? Screw everybody else. The best thing you can do is just play the game as well as possible, and it doesn't matter who you step over along the way. But when we look at our elected leaders, or our unelected leaders, like who run our cartels of central banks, the incentives are just so broken. And those broken, perverted incentives create broken, perverted outcomes. And that's, I think, what, again, a lot of people may still be laboring under the delusion that if the elected leader is on your side of the aisle, they want what's best for you. And if they're on the other side of the aisle, they must want what's worst for you. And of course, the truth is neither of those things are true. The truth is somewhere in the middle. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is the reason that this fiat system that we have is so broken is because the incentives themselves are misaligned. You are incentivized to consume as much as you can, as fast as you can, as long as you can, and it doesn't matter what the consequences are. As John Maynard Keynes would say, in the end, we're all dead anyway, which is just like true, but what a terrible way to approach things. And he was saying that in reference to, like, we may as well just print the money, like we're all dead anyway. It's like, yeah, you're dead, but your kids aren't, and their kids aren't, and their kids aren't. And I think this short-term thinking versus long-term thinking, for me, is one of the biggest demarcations between that fiat mentality and the kind of Bitcoiner mentality. And I'd love to just hear, because for you, you were really forced out of even having the option of having a fiat mentality. How do you look at that? How do you think about that? How has that changed just either the way you run your business, how you think about your family? Yeah, let me know.
Dude, yeah, the family thing is absolutely massive. And on the business side, don't get me wrong, we have not been perfect. We've levered up. We've done we went public. Like we're inside this fiat game. Make no mistake. There's very few businesses that I can point to that are outside of the fiat game, and I commend the leaders in charge, because it's a challenge and it's hard to do. And that's one thing that I am charged with here at Bitcoin Well is moving us closer and closer and closer towards that Bitcoiner principled balance sheet, and that Bitcoiner principled shareholder group, and that Bitcoiner principled operating line. And yeah, like the business itself, we talk a lot about time preference, and we talk about helping more, that profit line of giving more to the world than what you consume. We talk about all of that, specifically to the family. And man, I am honestly, speaking of incentives and how the monetary system that you're a part of, the team, so to speak, that you're a part of, can influence like just different aspects of life. There is no other industry in the world other than Bitcoiners that are having more kids and more bullish about the future. And frankly, if I wasn't in Bitcoin, I have like a Christian faith that probably would tie in, and I actually personally believe that Bitcoin is a biblical money. I actually give a presentation called "Jesus is a Bitcoiner," and it talks about that as a whole. And I'll be giving that actually at Adopting Bitcoin this year. I'm not sure if you're going to be there, but it's a cool and it's an interesting presentation, anyways. That is also a bit provocative. But barring all that, my optimism on the future, thanks to Bitcoin, allows me to have children. It gives me permission to bring a bloodline into the earth, knowing that they won't be subject to suffering, knowing that they won't have the same level of despair that people who don't have Bitcoin, and not because they're going to be wealthy, not because of their purchasing power, but because of the freedom they're going to have, because of their ability to flee to a different jurisdiction that maybe is more favorable to Bitcoin, because of their ability to find and instantly connect with a group of like-minded individuals. Bitcoin truly gives you the ability to understand almost immediately where someone's core value set lies, and if it's a core value set of production or consumption, or of ultimately of slavery or freedom. Because when you're talking about, like, today, I would say the world is a dark place today. You have to lock your doors at night. You can't really trust your neighbor. There's you think back to like our grandparents, and it was like, kick the kids out of the house. You don't see them for 10, 12 hours. They come back when the streetlights come on, and that was your curfew. Today you can't. Today you've got P. Diddy going to jail for molesting how many hundreds, thousands of children, and horrible things. And this stems back from, again, the root of where our money comes from. We have a money system that is rooted in theft, rooted in slavery, because we've put people in charge of money. But if you take, money's all fake, money is all irrelevant, money is but a representation of our time, of our value, of our efforts. And so if someone's in charge of the money, but the money is actually just a representation of our time, that means someone's in charge of your time, which is like rooted in that's like the root of slavery. And so now we've got someone in charge of our time, someone who controls our time, and someone who's just arbitrarily producing more time, making my time worth a lot less. And that's where the theft comes in. So now I have this like unknown, invisible force all around me making my time worth less. That feels bad, right? I don't think that feels good for anyone, that your value is just being stripped away. I imagine this is how someone who paints a beautiful painting feels when they see a ripoff of it on eBay or on Etsy. It's like, damn, I spent days or months, crafting that, picking the perfect color set, the perfect brush stroke. I didn't paint for 3 days because my hand was tense and I couldn't get the right stroke out. You're going to snap a picture and just print that out and sell it at Walmart? Like, that sucks, right? That's my value being ripped away, but it's invisible. We can't point at it. We can't fixate our energy on getting rid of that invisible force. And so what happens? All of a sudden, everyone becomes that invisible force. Your neighbor is stealing from you. And then back to what you said, well, if they're stealing from me, I better steal first, because this is a normal part of life now. Stealing is natural, and look at me, I'm being stolen from, you're being stolen from, something is stealing from us. It might be you, but it might not be you, but I better steal from you before you steal from me. And now we've turned our backs on you. Look at me, I'm getting all excited. I'm flipping my mic out of there. And
yes.
We've turned our backs on each other. We're no longer this cohesive species that works together. And you can see how broken and dusted this is when you look at animal packs, and you look at how they respond without money. Now, don't get me wrong, we're a lot better off than the animals because we have money. But you look at how a collective species works together when there is no invisible force stealing from them. And I'm not sure if have you watched Chimp Empire on Netflix?
I have not yet. I've been debating
Dude, you got to watch it, man. I've watched it a lot. It's the perfect background show. If you're editing, maybe you're listening to yourself speak, which if I had your voice, I would also want to listen to myself speak at 1 a.m. But if you're ever editing or you're doing something, you just need something on in the background, you throw Chimp Empire on. It is out of hand amazing, and showcases, there's rivalry. There's 2 chimp clans that get after it. But the clan itself, it's shocking to see their hierarchy. It's shocking to see how it works. It's amazing to see how, a natural form of politics looks. And, the chimps, they don't have it perfect, but they got it better than we do. And it just goes to show how I would hazard a guess that there are more, chimps have another chimp's back more than humans have another human's back. And you got to look at the differences. And one of the main differences is that we've got someone who's in charge of our time as humans. And Bitcoin removes that. And Bitcoin removes that invisible force. And that's why I think, I meet a Bitcoiner. Like Julian and I is actually a great example. I didn't know him at all. Saw his videos. We had a couple phone calls. And then we shared an Airbnb at a Bitcoin conference in Calgary. And it's like, you hear, there's some horror stories of meeting people online and then going to share houses with them. And I'm not going to lie, I don't even know if Julian knows this. When I went to bed, we each had our own rooms. Piled the chairs up in front of the doors just in case he was like crazy axe murderer. And I would at least have some time to I'd hear the chairs come down. And I'd be able to jump up and maybe defend myself.
I can't wait for him to listen to this later. And
he's
going to be like, I did the same thing. I had all the chairs up against the door.
Totally. I didn't trust you either. But I just, even that aside, outside of the Bitcoin industry, you don't get to share houses with people that you don't know. And it's because you don't have that common set. He and I both know the truth that there's no invisible force stealing from our Bitcoin stash. And that's a special thing. That's a bond. And that what that also means is that we're aware of the secret force that's stealing our power, but we also want to fight it. We also want to go against it. We're voting against it with our time and efforts. And those two things just point your core values in the same direction. And it's super special.
I think there are so many people, to your point earlier, if you didn't have Bitcoin, you would be not in the place that you are now, just mentally, even just hopeful about the future. And this is something I hear about and talk about with Bitcoiners time and time again, is that the existence of Bitcoin is what enables you to have hope in the future. It's not just Bitcoin itself. It's not just the number go up part of it. It's the fact that it exists and all that means as far as what we have the power to create going forward. Yes, what exists now. Yes, what is being built now. But the implications of that down the line, and knowing that this is a system that cannot be shut off, that cannot be co-opted, you then have some hope that, okay, there's something there that this, the invisible hand of government fuckery can't diddle. And you have that not just for yourself, but for your children and your grandchildren. You have something that that actually allows you to plan long into the future. You have something that you can have certainty in even after you are dead, which is not the case with fiat. I don't have certainty what fiat is going to do tomorrow or next week or next month. I don't know. I'll have to listen to what the shamans in the Federal Reserve say after they come out of their smoky room and have decided how much to change the price of money.
On,
It's just insane. Larry Lepard said something to me, which I just thought was great. He was like, Walker, we're going to look back. Our grandkids are going to look back at this era that we're living in right now, and they're going to look at it the same way that we look at bloodletting. Bloodletting is insane. We look at that now and what do you mean you thought you could just drain someone's blood when they were sick and they would get healthy? That's fucking nuts. Anyone can see that that's a dumb idea. But at the time, if you were the leading medical experts were they're coughing up a lot. They look pretty pale and peaky. And what if we stuck some leeches on them, cut them a little bit, drained out some of that blood, get the bad blood out?
Get the bad blood out. Get rid of the bad blood.
That's nuts. But they're going to look at what we have now in our monetary system the same way. And what he said is, you let 12 guys and maybe a couple of gals, but you let a group of small unelected people control the value of money. That is insane.
Yeah.
That is, Grandpa, what were you guys thinking? Why didn't you say something? It's well, we did. We kind of tried. I had a podcast at least, so I did something, But it is nuts when you think about it. And that's one of the ways I've really started to try formulating this a little bit better so that it is more approachable for people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you just talk about the solution, which I think we agree here, and a lot of folks listening, that solution is Bitcoin. That's what enables the solution, right? But if you don't understand the problem, then it's really hard to see why you should even care about the solution, And moreover, if you don't understand the radical difference between what exists in fiat and what exists and is possible in Bitcoin, You really can't get it. So drawing that comparison of what would you rather have? Would you rather have a system that is arbitrary, controlled by a small group of people that you have no insight into? You are constantly waiting to react to what they do. You can work as hard as you want, but they will still be able to steal arbitrary amounts of your time and energy. Do you want that? Or do you want a system where you know exactly what is going to happen with it? Programmatically, you can look 100, 150 years, 1,000 years into the future, and you know what's going to be happening. And no one can steal your time and energy. Which one do you want? And in the Resistance Money book that Bradley Rettler and Andrew Bailey and Craig Warmke just released, which is for anyone out there, it's really excellent. But they have a great line in there, which is a great framing for why Bitcoin. And they put it as, if you didn't know who you would be tomorrow, if you could wake up and you have no control over who you are, you're not you right now. You could be absolutely anyone. Would you rather live in a world in which Bitcoin exists or one in which it doesn't?
Wow.
Because you could wake up tomorrow and be a Russian oligarch and you don't care about, or you could wake up and be a struggling entrepreneur in South America, or you could wake up and be Julian Assange or Michael Saylor. The point being, you could be anyone. And if you didn't know who you were going to be, what kind of world would you want to live in? One where only fiat exists. The only method of money is this extractionist system, or one in which Bitcoin exists. And I think that's a really compelling way to put things for people who are still just struggling to get why folks like you and I and so many of the people we know are so passionate about this technology.
Yeah, man. And unfortunately, the passion comes from that level of curiosity I was kind of talking about earlier, and the ability to unlearn things that we've been taught, because we've kind of gone through this change. And you mentioned it earlier about how we've got all this access to information. And like you said on that note, just because it's published doesn't make it true. And I think, I haven't watched it yet, but I was talking with, Dave Bradley. I'm not sure if you've met him or not.
I'm not sure.
He's a wicked OG Bitcoiner. He looks like Bubbles, is the best way to describe him. From the Trailer Park Boys.
Sounds familiar. Yeah. Okay.
He hosts the Bitcoin Rodeo in Calgary. Anyways, him and I were talking, and we were talking just about kind of a wide variety of things. And he brought up Joe Rogan's recent comedy special. And he said, before the pandemic, I was pro-vaccine and pro-medicine. And he said, and now I'm not even sure if we landed on the moon. And it's like such an unraveling of the thread of the things that we've learned. And it's caused me, as a result, to take that thought process and now extrapolate it out into the future around my kids and what they're going to learn. And I'm looking a lot. My oldest son has just turned 8. And my wife and I, when they went to kindergarten, the oldest one went to kindergarten, we kind of said that grade 4, they're coming out of school. Up until grade 4, grade 1, 2, and 3 in kindergarten, we kind of figured it's mostly play. You're not going to learn anything too harmful. But the indoctrination kind of begins in year 4. And so I'm looking at different alternatives. Homeschool is an obvious one. I'm linking up with a couple of NPO private education structures here in Alberta, which seem pretty awesome. And, naturally this comes up frequently with my friend group who has lots of kids the same age. They're what's the problem? Look at the textbooks, they're all fine. It's yeah, I'm not wildly concerned about the textbooks today, but a textbook today is different from a textbook 30 years ago. And a textbook in 30 years is going to be different from a textbook today. And I don't trust that a textbook in 30 years with updated data is going to have valid and real data. And I don't necessarily want to be subject to, changing data. And I think about how much I had to unlearn, and I'm happy to unlearn because I'm confident and curious, and I have the luxury of unlearning things. But, I've got a lot of friends that just think I'm nuts. And granted, I'm a psychopath. I am a little nuts. but I'm nuts and right a lot of the times. Like, I'm not sure what it was like for you, but going through people called me wicked and evil for not getting the COVID vaccine, and they told me that there was no problems and that it was all good and all safe, and we're seeing that to just be completely false right now. And it's like that just keeps happening. Bitcoin was a scam and Bitcoin's not going to work. All the same stuff that I believed, and then all of a sudden it works, and the bank's going to have your money, and like, you're not crazy, or you're crazy. The bank will never steal your money, and then the bank steals the money. And it's like, man, this crazy guy keeps getting all the stuff right. maybe he's not the crazy guy, I guess, is kind of the point. And it makes me very sad that we live in a society that's got the ability to label someone crazy because they're questioning what the man on the TV says, what the man in the suit says, what the man with the fancy hammer in his hand says. And that's a sad world. Another thing that the chimps don't have, but that's a sad world that we live in, where rather than actually getting curious and not thinking less of, but just like engaging in reasonable conversation with someone, back down to what you said, that first principles approach. We don't do that. We just discount, call them crazy. And even not just non-Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners do this too. And it saddens me, right? That's kind of where some of that negativity in the space can kind of stem from, is and what you're talking about. The space becomes less accessible. There's an inverse relationship between space accessibility and toxicity of Bitcoiners. And, I don't want to be a part. If there's 8 of the cool kids at a table with their backwards hats and they're smoking their cigarettes and they're making fun of everyone, I'm going to kind of keep my distance. And I'm going to gravitate towards people that are like, hey, come on, let me help you out. I want to grow you and I want to build you up. And Bitcoiners have a choice to make right now. They're going to be the cool kids with the backwards hats and the cigarettes in their mouth and the chains in the pocket. The guy, right? Or they can be the Bitcoin podcast, making things accessible. The Get Based channel, making things accessible. One more shout out. The Bitcoin Well platform, making things accessible. And make this space one that will grow and flourish and keep the diversity that you talked about and keep the growth that we're currently seeing. Is it a secret, or is it a surprise to anyone that the guy, the founder of the Nostr protocol, is a Bitcoiner? Does that shock anybody on planet Earth? Is it unreasonable to people that Jack Dorsey is one of the bigger funders of that protocol? No, that's not surprising to me. Is it a surprise to you that the politician in RFK who's most advocating for the scam of the food industry knows a lot more about Bitcoin than any other politician on planet Earth? No, doesn't surprise me. Is it surprise to anyone that the first, presidential Bitcoin kind of advocate in Nayib Bukele is also, fixing and innovating the way they use volcano energy in El Salvador and turning that into one of the safest places on Earth? Is this a surprise to anybody? And as a result, do we not want more people to be in this space doing more innovative things? I don't know about you, but volcano power wasn't on my, radar by any stretch of the imagination.
Cool.
It's so cool, man. It's amazing. I think about, even here in Alberta, we've got so much opportunity to use excess energy for Bitcoin mining to help decentralize that network, to help bolster that network, to simultaneously reduce, the power struggle and the power problem that exists in Alberta and more broadly in Canada. And I just there's so many Bitcoiners doing so many maybe tangentially Bitcoin related things, but that are bigger than Bitcoin, that are more for the human race, that I just think we need to be better and hold ourselves to a higher standard, to be the cool, welcoming crew, not just the cool kids that made their millions and, kind of tell you to get bent and have fun staying poor. But that's my rant on that, I suppose.
I appreciate that, because it's something that I personally try to be cognizant of, because I also am somebody who I enjoy ridiculing things. Now, I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way. I mean to ridicule, to satirize, to make fun of in the true
like a
sense.
roast.
Yeah, right. And there's so much absurdity in our world today. There's so much to do that with, right? But it's because it's so tempting sometimes when you see a really dumb take on, like, you see a real dumb take and you're like, I just want to say, if it's about Bitcoin, have fun staying poor, or if it's whatever it might be about, like it's that knee-jerk reaction to want to go that negative path. But if you can just breathe for a second, and this is something I have to always tell myself because I'm not always perfect with it, right? But I try as much as possible, and I agree with you that leading with positivity, leading with inclusivity, and I don't mean that in the bullshit, like,
not the
woke
DEI way.
No, I don't mean it in that way. I mean genuinely being inclusive, because Bitcoin itself is inclusive. It is not exclusive. It cannot be. The protocol does not allow for exclusion. That is really powerful. And people, of course, are going to naturally form tribes, right? And are naturally, that's what we do as human beings. We form tribes with people that are similar to us. But that similarity, the great thing about Bitcoin is that similarity doesn't have to be any of the usual markers that we go by for what makes us similar to others. It doesn't have to be where you live, what you look like, what religion that you practice. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can just be, I believe in better money. Mm-hmm. And that's my tribe. And so I think, I'm curious what you think, because you guys with Get Based, you're very much, I think, trying to cast a wide net into, okay, how do we reach out to more people? Peter McCormack with the rebrand of his show to Mr. Obnoxious. I think that's a good thing. He's trying to, what he was saying is, it's not a Bitcoin show, but it's a show with a Bitcoin heartbeat still.
Yeah.
It's weaving Bitcoin in as part of the, part of that narrative versus the focus of the narrative. Not, again, nearly as on the nose as somebody who would have the Bitcoin podcast, geez.
The in capital letters, too. I love that so much. The first couple times I saw it, I was like, is that a typo? And I was like, no. That's just the brand, and I respect that.
I appreciate that. But no, so my point being, I'm curious what you think. There are, so what you guys are doing with Get Based, what Peter is doing to try and widen this net. Because personally, I want more people to know about Bitcoin, not just know about it, because I think now a lot of people know about Bitcoin, but the ratio of people that know about Bitcoin versus hold Bitcoin, I think, is actually growing larger. Like, there's a greater discrepancy because more people know about it now. It's more in the
arguably everyone knows, like everybody has heard of at least Bitcoin for sure.
As opposed to, like, if you heard about Bitcoin in 2013, the ratio of people who had heard about Bitcoin and then were using Bitcoin, like, it might have been fairly even, right? Now there's a massive discrepancy. The more people, but so how do you begin to close that gap? Does it come down? I mean, does it always come down to education? Does it come down to content? Does it come down to focusing on the problems of fiat clown world and using that as a lead in to why Bitcoin? Or how do you look at that? Or is it just, what, though everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. If you don't get it, have fun staying poor. See you later. I'll be on my island. Yeah.
I think from my perspective, I consider myself pretty lucky that it was a left-leaning, kind of more authoritarian regime in power while Bitcoin was coming to light. And I think that Bitcoin was created to oppose that level of regime, understanding still that both sides of the coin want to oppress and want to control. And so I consider myself lucky there, and I want to preface this with that. But I do think that the Bitcoin adoption curve probably looks unlike anything we've seen, which is a slow adoption curve up, kind of like just like very, very similar to what we see in like a normal tech kind of industry, the phones, the computers, the whatever, like that standard S curve. But I think the S doesn't complete. It just shoots straight up at the end. And similar to, maybe you've seen the clip of Safe talking about Bitcoin adoption being like gunpowder. I think he's 50% right. I think it will be gunpowder for the left, because the left are going to experience their censorship moment. They're going to realize that Bitcoin is bigger than left versus right. Because right now, Bitcoin's money for the right, money for the libertarians, money for the freedom crew, money for people that think we are, for those crazy tinfoil hat people that think the government is trying to control them. Money's only for those people. And maybe it is. And frankly, you know, we believe that Bitcoin's for everyone. But it's half the population doesn't believe that they're included in the people. And so we're going to see that like slow adoption through the right side of the aisle. And then the pendulum's going to swing. That's what political pendulums do. We're going to have a censorship moment on the left where we're going to get some, you know, fascist in charge who wants to put all the pro-lifers or the pro-choicers in jail, and something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm not going to try to predict it. Something's going to happen where that entire side of the aisle gets almost overnight what the anti-vax freedom community has been getting for the last few years. And it's going to be like gunpowder at that point, where Bitcoin adoption it goes straight up from there. And so it's like a half an S and then a line, in my opinion. And I think that is probably in our lifetime, I would say. I don't think it's in this decade. But I do think that we're seeing the pendulum swing in such a way that it probably swings back too hard. And the thing about freedom is, like, I'm trying to like figure out how to say this in my head. The pendulum swung towards the left. We had Bitcoin introduced, and it kind of like created this like stop to the ball moving over too far left. And now that inertia is pushing back. But there's just nothing that can prevent, like, Bitcoin was like a great bouncing off character to go. And so I think kind of inevitably the pendulum swings, it's going to swing a little too far. We're kind of going to head into like fascist, Hitler, crazy, you know, right-wing territory. And again, that's not what Bitcoiners want. Bitcoiners are above that system. We are apolitical. I don't want left or right. I actually don't even participate in elections because I just think it's a clown show and I don't really care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I have my sats in self-custody. Thank you very much. But like, we're just, it's, in my opinion, inevitable that the pendulum swings so far to the right. We get that level of oppression kind of comes and starts coming back in, not to Bitcoiners, because it's probably like pretty good for Bitcoiners that believe in our ideology. But that whole other side gets oppressed, and then they adopt Bitcoin. And then finally, Bitcoin is for everyone. Maybe that's the final crumbling of the system. Like right now, we're kind of watching and witnessing the crumbling of the left. Like all this DEI, you know, rainbow stuff is like, it's pretty obvious the crumbling of the left. You know, all the like exposing the BLM stuff, exposing this critical race theory, exposing the gender ideology. Like it's just blatant at this point. And you have to have your head pretty far down a hole to not see it. And so that's getting obliterated. And then, you know, it'll swing too far the other way, and then that side will also get obliterated. And then, man, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what the world looks like on a Bitcoin standard? But that's when a Bitcoin standard comes in, is when both sides of the aisle have felt oppression of finance. Both sides of the aisle have been controlled due to their finances, their money being obliterated. And both sides of the aisle realize that we were just, what are those bugs that you put in a jar and shake and they fight each other instead of like coming out of the jar? Both sides of the aisle realize that we've just been, you know, not doing this. And when we start doing this, that's when society gets cool and like the rebirth happens.
I want to dig into kind of, I guess, hopeful visions for the future in a second. But one thing I wanted to double back on is talking about this you know, right-left dichotomy in the U.S., you know, the red-blue kind of false dichotomy, right, that is
and
pushed.
Just quickly on that, it's so funny. Canada is opposite.
Oh, really?
Red in Canada is like left-leaning. Like our liberals are left and conservatives are blue. So it's just so funny how like, you know, the red, blue, right, left is just like flipped in Canada. I always find that amusing. But anyways,
that's a great illustration of just the arbitrariness and the true nature of this. It's a Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, right? Like, you know, pick one, and there's no other choice. Damn
That's right.
It's only Coke or Pepsi. But what I was going
It's
to say
obviously
is
Coke, but yeah, you're right.
of course, yes, we can all agree on that. Yes, Coke is far superior. Okay, so this idea that I agree with you, Bitcoin does not have a party preference, right? Bitcoin can't have preferences. One thing that I do want to clarify, though, is I think that while I think money is inherently political, I think Bitcoin is inherently political. However, Bitcoin is not partisan. It is political in the sense that we are talking about the separation of money and state. How could that not be political? But again, to emphasize, being political is not the same thing as being partisan. It must be, it is necessarily political if we are talking about breaking down the status quo, which is having money and state together like this, and separating those two. That is an inherently political idea. And that's okay. It's okay. Money has always been political, right? Bitcoin is just the best money humans have ever discovered. It is political, but it is not partisan. And I think that I agree with you completely that once folks on the left start feeling, the pendulum always swings back too hard, right? And then swings back harder again and harder again and harder again. And over again. This is the story of human history, right? It is always overreactions to what the last group did. It's always dealing with, some fiat psychologist would probably call it some sort of repressed trauma or some
right, generational trauma.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. But it will be interesting to see, does Bitcoin enable that pendulum to stop swinging so violently at some point? And is that the point? I hadn't heard it phrased as you did, which I think is a really nice way of putting it, that you won't have, whatever people think of as hyper Bitcoinization, because I think people have a lot of different ways that they personally think about that. It's kind of open to interpretation to a certain extent. But whatever you think of that is, most people get smart by force, not by choice. And grokking Bitcoin involves getting smart. It involves killing your ego, setting aside your preconceived notions about what money is, about how the world works, about what it means to save. And it means admitting that maybe I know nothing and I need to start again with an open mind. But most people will not do that until they have been forced to, because external pressures require it. And for a lot of people, I think it was COVID, right? And all the money printing that happened there. And that was it for me. I didn't get into Bitcoin until 2020. After hearing about it in 2017 and in 2014 and thinking, all right, whatever, that's cool, nerd. But back to my fiat bullshit. But
I got a 401k,
in 2020, I got
you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I work for a big consulting firm. I think I'll be just fine, But then in 2020, I got it because, and I'm still getting it, right? I'm still not there. I'm still going down this rabbit hole. But I needed some of that force. And I applaud people who make the choice, who are not being actively forced. They're not being actively pressured by negative externalities, but they electively say, this is something I need to pay attention to. And I think like that's amazing. And I really applaud people who got Bitcoin kind of their own accord without there being some external force, censorship, general government fuckery, whatever it might be, that was like the catalyst for them. But I think for most people, that is what there has to be a catalyst, because until there is, you just aren't going to fully be ready to get it and why it means so much.
Totally, man. And I think that's part of the initiative behind the content that we make at Get Based is it's like, here's something that is happening, this invisible force that we've kind of discussed. You can't quite put your finger on it. And here's kind of the root to all that, which is a broken money system. And I think that shows, I'm hopeful anyways, that will help kind of like ignore or maybe fast track and potentially reduce the amount of pain that is required to get Bitcoin. Because you're bang on, man. It does require an immense amount of pain to reach hyper Bitcoinization. And I would much rather there be no or less pain towards hyper-Bitcoinization. Because hyper-Bitcoinization is inevitable. Bitcoiners need to march towards the path that causes humanity the least amount of pain. And I think that that's probably where some of the nuance and differences comes in around Bitcoiners, which is where the fun begins. That's where we can actually get into, like, reasonable debates, and you can see how democracy and decentralization works in a real democratic and decentralized system. Like, you can see it in the block wars. You can see it in how Bitcoin has responded to giant forks in the road. Do we go this way or this way? And you have a whole group of people, not psyopted, not corrupt, not paid by anything, purely with a self-interested, but a self-interested that stems toward a collective interested approach, using first principles, using basic thoughts, using, this extraction theory where we can take this leads to this, leads to that, make your own choice. And it was like, dude, being around during the block wars was insane. And I think that, Nostr is going to have its equivalent for the block wars. It's going to change Nostr forever. And it's so cool seeing decentralized democracy at work. And I hope that we can have enough decentralized democracy in Bitcoin to, eliminate pain towards hyper-Bitcoinization.
Yeah, and we'll never eliminate all pain, right? Like, and that's the thing. Every fiat currency in the history of mankind has collapsed eventually.
Yes.
They all go to zero eventually. When that happens, it results in an unimaginable amount of pain, suffering, war, famine. A lot of people die. Obviously, and I think that's why we talk about Bitcoin as being a lifeboat. That's actually such an apt metaphor. Maybe it's not even a lifeboat. It's like a whole new, fully decked out cruise ship that just pulled up alongside you and is like, look here, I'm dropping a ladder down. Your boat is clearly sinking. The water is freezing cold. You've got like 3 minutes in that water before you go hypothermic, and then you will die. But still, some people are like, it doesn't feel that cold yet. Like, it's just my feet in the water. I think I'll be fine.
Plus, I got a jacket, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I've got my little life preserver. I'll be okay. But that is why I genuinely care so much about Bitcoin education. It's why I started another fucking Bitcoin podcast, because I don't think we have enough Bitcoin podcasts until we have more Bitcoiner podcasts than there are TradFi Bro podcasts, and there are a lot.
Wow, we have barely scratched the surface.
We got a long way to go, right? And I know, like, you and Julian and Isa, this is why you guys do this too, because you care about the education, and because there are great stories to be told as well.
Yeah.
That's the thing. This is what one of the things I love most about Bitcoin. We don't have to lie. We don't have to lie about any of it. And all the fiat system can do to try to disparage Bitcoin, to try and, you look at the Elizabeth Warren types or any of the others who have, Greenpeace bringing their crusades against Bitcoin, all they can do is lie. And all we must do is tell the truth. And
Totally.
That is powerful. That puts us in a position of power.
Even one step further from that, not even tell the truth, maybe just encourage people to think about it reasonably. Because, like, there's a small and diminishing chance that we're wrong. And if we are, I'd love to know about it. And this is, every time someone pitches me on the new crypto, I'm like, all right, bet. I want to hear about it. Tell me why this preserves my value better. Well, this, and this. Okay, so that doesn't work because of this first basic principle, so we'll put an X over that. How is it more decentralized? Well, it was pre-mined, and we control the code, but okay, bet. So that's not it. Put an X over that. So it's not going to preserve my value. It's more centralized. Remind me again why it's worth saving for my great-great-granddaughter. Remind me again how I can trust this will be here after I die. I can't, ergo, not better than Bitcoin. I'm always open to seeing, new things. I'm always open to seeing the next Bitcoin. I'm just so locked in on my mission and the reason why we're in Bitcoin that I've yet to find a project or a token or a money supply that actually works. Even like the Peter Schiff gold kind of saga that we're currently in this ecosystem. It's like you just can't call yourself a logical thinker and think that gold is better than Bitcoin, because it has all the same properties to gold, but for the fact that it's infinitely divisible and infinitely transferable, which just like makes the money more valuable. Like that's just like, it's just like root base economics. This is just how it is. And I think the only reason the gold, silver people are around is because they don't have that like single mission focus like Bitcoiners do. There is no second best, is a common phrase in Bitcoin, but they got gold and silver, right? They're all kind of like psyoped around like diversification and have more than one thing. It's like, no, the world doesn't work like that. There's not two kinds of gravity, right? There's not like two kinds of rules that exist. You just get one set of rules. And the money rule is Bitcoin, right? The gravity rule is 9.81 meters per second. The money rule is Bitcoin. Not like Bitcoin at some percentage of your portfolio, and then some tax advantaged ETF, and then some over here where you're getting yield, and then, you know, some physical metals, and don't forget your oil barrels. And it's like, no. Forget all that. The money rule is the Bitcoin protocol. Everything else is garbage and goes down against that money protocol.
Man, that was fucking well said.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. And I it is funny to see the traps that people fall into. And I think that even Peter Schiff is an interesting one, because I think he probably does hold a
It's got to be clout at this point.
Yeah,
he's
like,
too smart. Like it's
that's the thing. He's not an idiot. Like
no.
Clearly, like he agrees with Bitcoiners agree with him on basically everything leading right up to you get to gold is better than Bitcoin. But otherwise it's like, you know, any tweets of his that aren't about Bitcoin, I'm like, yeah, no, that's a pretty solid analysis.
Yeah, totally
solid
agree.
analysis. Yep, you're spot on here, Pete. But yeah, you know, I don't even know how to follow that last part up. So, you know, that may be a great note to end on. But first, I want to give you a chance. Anything else we didn't cover that you want to get into? Any last words, piece of advice, thoughts?
Man, I got thoughts for days. I love, I want to just like commend you, man, and like thank you for the good work that you're doing. I think it's great to see Bitcoiners marching towards a common goal. I think that Bitcoin is such a unique industry to be able to live in. And this time, like, think about how good everything got when the church left the state and we decentralized religion. That's a net benefit for the world. And I think that the state and money have been kind of linked for so long, and when we split that, it's good. And so I want to encourage everyone listening, just find your path and like reduce your thinking to first basic principles. Understand why you're doing something, and understand and really, really dial into how and why it makes the world a better place. And then I think probably the last thing is just don't be afraid to be challenged on it. And don't be afraid to be wrong and like back yourself up. It's totally fine to be wrong on things. And that's how we learn. And man, like I love the, you know, like the entrepreneur's inspirational Instagram page or whatever. You see, like, you never see a pro athlete shaming the first time football player, or like, you know, a pro athlete that doesn't shame you for working out, trying to get better. I certainly don't shame, you know, like many entrepreneurs are in my DMs and we chat, and I've got a great group of people that I'm lucky to be sharing my experience with and trying to help them navigate their business in whatever industry they're in. And I love that. And when they make a mistake, it's never like, haha, I told you so, like, you idiot, you know. It's very much like, all right, you know, do we know why we made the mistake? How do we revert that and then push forward? And I think that the world's just better when we care less what other people think, but listen more to what they say. And I would like to encourage people to do that. Go after it with a first principles approach. I love when people call me crazy, and then I ask them why, and then they tell me why they think I'm crazy. And then I go, I think you're wrong. and that's fine. And I'm confident. But if I'm crazy, I want to know. And if I'm wrong about Bitcoin, please tell me why. But this is what's important to me with Bitcoin. And you have not shown me how I'm wrong based on what's important to me. If what's important to you is someone else can tell you what you can do with your money, how your inheritance gets laid out between your children, that you can or cannot leave your country, if that's important to you, then good. Stay in the fiat system. You actually probably wouldn't like Bitcoin very much. But what's important to me is freedom. And as a result, I like Bitcoin quite a bit.
And possibly, I didn't think you could do it, but an even better note to end on. Adam, thanks for your time. Where do you want to send people? Yeah,
definitely would encourage people to follow me on Twitter, at Adam O'Brien _ or on Nostr. I'm a big NIPO5 proponent, so I'm not going to rattle off my NPub right now, and I'm being facetious because of, obviously I'm not going to rattle off an NPub. You can go to adam@btcw.app is my NIPO5 verification, and you can follow me on Nostr. And then also would love people, in the spirit of what I just ranted on, go to bitcoinwell.com, use the platform, send me your feedback. I love getting feedback so much. User feedback is the number one most valuable thing to me. We're building a platform for me. I joke about it. It's like, why are you building Bitcoin Well? It's like so that I can interact with a legacy financial system before hyper Bitcoinization, because I got to pay my power bill and like send my paycheck somewhere. Admittedly, it's built for me. Lucky for us, 25,000 people also love it and use it. But I would love for it to be 250,000 or 2.5 million. And so use Bitcoin Well. We're early. We're in the States now, so you can buy and sell Bitcoin directly to and from self-custody in the USA. We're the only non-custodial platform in the USA. And if you're in Canada, you can pay your bills and buy gift cards and swap Lightning to main chain and all this good stuff. So, use the platform, tear it apart, tell me why it sucks, and then let me make it better.
That's awesome, man. I encourage people to check that out for sure. Well, Adam, thank you for your time. Bitcoin is scarce, but Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thanks for sharing your scarce time on this one. This was a treat.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure to be here.
And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. If you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring another fucking Bitcoin podcast, head to bitcoinpodcast.net/sponsor. If you're enjoying the Bitcoin Podcast, consider giving the show a 5-star review wherever you listen, or sharing the show with your friends, family, and strangers on the internet. Or don't, Bitcoin doesn't care, but I always appreciate it. You can find me on Nostr by going to primal.net/walker. If you want to follow the Bitcoin Podcast on Twitter, go to @TitcoinPodcast and @WalkerAmerica. You can also find the video version of this podcast at youtube.com/@WalkerAmerica and @WalkerAmerica on Rumble. Or just go to bitcoinpodcast.net/podcast and find links everywhere. Bitcoin is scarce. There will only ever be 21 million, but Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thank you for spending your scarce time to listen to another fucking Bitcoin podcast. Until next time, stay free.